All right, word leaked out this week that it's very likely the NCAA tournament will expand from 68 teams to either 72 or 76. The thought being there will be more play-in games, either involving more Power 5 schools, or they will push the smaller schools back into those games and allow the lower part of the conferences, the Power 5 guys, into the tournament to begin with and make the little teams play their way in. Whatever doesn't work for the little guy is what's going to happen. It's funny, I don't think anybody here likes this, right?
No.
Doesn't need to expand. But when you look at Greg Sankey and the other commissioners, they want more money. And that's why I think for all the people who sit around and say, well, you can't have a tournament without the little guy, I think it's going to come to that. Let me put something up on screen. We'll see if these guys agree. Usually when I do this, they don't. I say follow the money. The 14 SEC schools are going to make $32 million from this year's NCAA tournament. It's the number of teams you get in, and then the number of rounds they play. So you get units, and X amount of units equals $32 million. It's paid out over 6 years, but let's just look at it for that 1 year thing. $32 million. That's about $2.2 million per school for one tournament in the SEC. Now, if the SEC and Big Ten if they siphon off the best of the ACC and form a 40-team Super League, like everybody discusses, and they just say, we're doing our own tournament, the TV deal would only have to be $120 million a year, which may sound big to you, but it's not. If it's $120 million a year and there's 40 schools, those schools all just jump their yearly share to $3 million instead of $2.2 million. Now, whether that's good or bad for the sport and the small schools, the big schools would make more money per school by holding their own tournament, which is why I almost guarantee someday they will. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong about your final thesis. Someday they will break off and do this, especially if that's all it's going to take and this is all they're getting paid back out of this. Stephen A. Smith's about to sign a deal making $25 million a year from ESPN. So $120 million for the entire NCAA tournament that would make them more money now than they were making before?
Yeah, a 40-team Super League tournament.
Absolutely, yes. It's going to happen eventually.
I'm not a fan. You're right. It is going to happen.
I'm not a fan either. Right, I just think it's going to happen.
It is going to happen.
Something like that.
I'm surprised they haven't, even if it's not pushing the small schools into that, I'm surprised they haven't already expanded it. I mean, that is the NCAA's route to more money, and because it's their tournament. So I'm surprised that hasn't already happened.
And Josh, now you've got this added because the players are going to be making more money than they've ever made before. Then you ever had to give them $22 million or whatever it's going to be. Now you've got an extra incentive to say, hey, we got to go make our money, so we're going to do this. Do you think it's going to come? It doesn't have to be that plan, but do you think it's going to come to something like that, where it will be the tournament is a Super League tournament for the big boys? Sorry, Hofstra, you're out.
They also have to make back a little money that they're going to have to pay out in the House settlement. So you have that issue that they're thinking through right now. How do we make up this money that we're giving back from this settlement over the next few years? Part of me just wants to choose that some part of what we've known college athletics will remain. So I want the answer to be no, with money being the driver that we're all well aware of at this point. Then predicting it makes a ton of sense. I'll hold out hope that somebody will step in from the commissioners who are just looking out for their job is to look out for their conference, by the way.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, the SEC. But that somebody will say, no, everybody needs some kind of involvement. This is one of the great things that exists in sports today, not just college sports, that somebody will keep that alive.
But the overall payout does $1.1 billion per year. So I think what we'll see first is you'll see the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12 try to get a larger piece of that pie, like they had the college football, the 12-team college football playoff pie, because that's a whole lot more than $32 million and more than $120 million if they can somehow get $150 to $200 million per power conference school, and all the rest of the peasants just split up among themselves whatever's left.
Yeah, you got the second biggest chunk of any of the conferences. I think the ACC got $34 million because they only had 5 teams in, but they all went deep into the tournament. So they got $34 million this past year. But it's a bigger number when you look at all these conferences get a chunk of it. Whereas that's why I think that the super leagues, if you will, the Big Ten, the SEC, which are already playing footsie with each other now, you finally saw that. I think that they're going to look at it and say, well, how many graduates are there at Hofstra a year? How many graduates are there at Maryland, Baltimore County? Yeah, I think we'll be fine. I think if we do a tournament and it's just Minnesota versus Tennessee, Minnesota cranks out 50. They got 50,000 undergrad. Tennessee's got, I don't know what it is now, 30, 40, who knows. All right, you've got the numbers. So I just think eventually it's going to come to the point where they get rid of the little guy, which I hate, but I think it's coming. All right, very good. When we come back, predictions for Game 2 and a few hundred other topics. We're going to race through it, including, don't know if you've seen this, a giant, literally, coming to the SEC in basketball this year. And when I say giant, I mean it. The biggest player ever, tallest ever. We'll show you his photo, tell you where he's going next.